It's vegan recipes with Pat and Emily.
Hey y'all, thanks for stopping in. Today I'm going to share a family recipe with you. We are making Aunt Anne's Oatmeal Date Bars. This is a family recipe that we've been making for years and it has always been vegan. So let's jump in and get started. To start for this recipe, we are going to rough chop up some dates. Make sure you have ones without pits or take the pits out. You could use pre-chopped dates, but they are usually coated in sugar. And I have done this with partially pre-chopped dates with sugar on them, and I have then just reduced the amount of sugar I put into the filling. And it doesn't really matter if your cuts are even for this because this is all going to cook down into a paste. By doing this rough cut, it just helps that process along. I'm just going to get our dates into a pot, saucepan. Once your whole pound of dates are chopped, just get them into your saucepan. To the dates, we're adding sugar and water. And we're going to get this on the stove top. I've got this on the stove now. We're going to bring it up to a boil and then down to a simmer to thicken up. You just want to get our sugar mixed in there. You can see we've come up to a boil. I'm going to give it a good stir. Now it's time to reduce the heat. While this is thickening up, you can go ahead and start chopping your nuts. I've already chopped my nuts up, but I wanted to show you if you have whole nuts and you need to chop them, this is what we use to chop our nuts with. You can see I've turned the heat down and we're getting close to a simmer, and also that the dates are starting to come apart and get all soft and mushy, and that is exactly what we want to happen.
Because these date bars are so sticky, I like to use parchment. So I'll take a pencil and I will draw around the edge. I had already done that off camera, but then Emily and I thought we should show you how we do this because I don't want to cook my food on the lines of the lead pencil. I turn it over and then I'm going to fold it on those lines, and if you'll notice I'm folding it a little bit less because the inside of the pan is less than the outside of the pan.
It can be really hard to get parchment to fit into a pan sometimes.
It is. Then I stand up the corners and I just fold them over. Stick it in your pan. It may be a tiny bit smaller, but when you're pressing the crust into this, it'll all just work out perfectly well. So we're ready to put our mix in here.
Now we are going to start the oatmeal part of our date bars, and this will become the base and also the crumble on top. We are going to mix rolled oats. We actually have half rolled oats and half minute oats. I have done it with both. Either work. This is half white flour and half whole wheat white flour. To that I am going to mix in my baking soda. We want to incorporate these together well. You could just use all of either flour. Sometimes we're just using what we have. Sometimes I like it better when I mix my flours. It incorporates a little more nutrition, and I'm going to add a dash of salt to that. Then this goes into our oats. To that I am adding brown sugar. Often I cannot find vegan brown sugar, in which case I use white sugar and I add some molasses to it, FYI. And you want to mix all these dry ingredients before we start getting the butter in there. See, I still got some lumps of brown sugar in there when I get out. That looks good. Now we want to cut in our butter, and you're gonna want to have your butter cold for this. You can also use Crisco in this recipe, which is originally what it called for. I just think the vegan butter gives it a nice little flavor, a little extra layer of flavor dimension. You could use a pastry mixer for this, or just a fork. We have one, we couldn't find it, so we're forking it in. This isn't so much stirring as just kind of cutting everything together. My arms are tired from playing. Get a little arm workout while you're baking. This can be a fun job for kids to do. I would give them a bigger bowl. I have taken my dates off of the stove. I still have some chunks in there, as you can see, but it is spreadable. If you cook it the whole way down to a paste, that's totally fine. If you leave it chunky, that's alright. To this, I am adding my chopped nuts. You can use whatever kind you want. We have a mix of pecans and walnuts today. I only ever use pecans and walnuts though. I don't ever pick different nuts. I'm not sure. We'll set this aside and let it cool, and I'm gonna get back to cutting my butter, which is pretty much done. Alright, here is the consistency that you want to get this crumbled to. You just don't want to have any pieces of butter that are left that are too big. And you also don't want any pieces that are too dry, I suppose. Want it so that it will kind of stick together when you ball it up. That looks good. I'm going to half this because we want to get half of this on the top. Use my measuring cup here and half on the bottom. And you are going to want to have a measuring cup. We're going to use it in a minute. Seems like it's about half. If anything, I'd go a little heavier on the bottom. Set that aside. Got our pan in here. Put our crumble in there. And then we're going to smooth it all out all the way to the edges and pack it down. You want to make sure it is semi-level and really pack it down in there and tightly compress it. All right, now it's time to get our filling in there. Filling is still fairly hot. These dates and nuts already smell delicious together. Again, you want to try to get it fairly level so that you get a little bit of everything in a bite. You want to work it into the corners. You want to just like slide it around. You don't want to pull it up. It will pull up on the layer below. Bit of a deep spot there. Just slide it over. And see, just like push it around. That looks like a good layer to me. And now we're just going to spread our crumble top out. This is going to go into an oven that's preheated to 350. Gotta get some over here. And then I lightly just push this on. You don't want to pack it down like the bottom, but you don't want to lose the top of your cookie when you're cutting these up later though. So just a light little pat down for the top. And this is ready for the oven. Our oatmeal date bars have totally cooled, and I am going to use the parchment paper to hopefully pull it up out of our pan and on to this cutting board. Perfect. Now we can peel down the parchment paper and start cutting. Time to plate up some cookies. These oatmeal date bars are a great old-fashioned treat. The crumble on top is nice and light, and the dates inside are sticky and sweet and delicious. I hope you give this recipe a try and come back next week.